In the news recently, we've had the floods in northern areas of Pakistan. Before I ask in detail about these, have you visited those areas before?
I have travelled, quite a lot the length and breadth of Pakistan and seen many of these areas. Obviously, at this point in time, I have not seen the flooding situation firsthand. But reading the reports, one can get a fairly good idea of what actually is happening and what all is going on there, and it sounds devastating. I don't think, as yet, the world actually has come to grips with the kind of problems and the kind of suffering people are undergoing in Pakistan. They're caught up in the politics of things, and that's very sad. It's not only that aid is needed there, it's also that there are people who know what they're doing in giving that aid and planning out something. Obviously, when devastation of at this magnitude happens, it can be overwhelming. But what it does need is people on the ground, people actually planning and organizing, and also at the same time a stream of aid coming in. Aid that can be used over there and can be used to the people over there, that would be helpful to the people over there, and that would be wonderful if that happened.
Having visited the areas, how well do you think they are suited to cope with these floods?
Certainly the infrastructure is not there, and hence you've got such big problems and crops and things like that, and people predicting that the economy is going to take a long time to recover from these floods, and so there is no infrastructure, or there's very little infrastructure that's left. They're saying that the Indus is spread, and it's taking in villages and things. The crops are being destroyed. People have lost their homes, their possessions. Disease, the outbreak of disease is there, and that danger is there. So at various levels, there are going to be help needed. This is a time where the West can rise up. There are probably people who are not only suffering the loss of everything, but great traumas, seeing everything go by. Here is a place for Christians to be, and to enable others to provide the comfort to these kind of people. There are also going to be, there are going to be some practical needs, and doctors and nurses and things like that, to prevent disease, to prevent more deaths, and of course other needs like tents and things like that too, so people will have some shelter and will have some food to just go through this time when the water subsides, and then to go back and see what's left. I don't think there's very much left.
Obviously, you said that the political side of things was getting caught up in, and you suggested that Christians should be there. Is there a case that the West, Christian or not, simply politically, could do a great blow to this war on terror by giving more, by helping more the local people next to the very areas that they're fighting?
I think here is an opportunity, and certainly we've seen some level of help provided by Western countries, but here is an opportunity where the West can show, Christian or not, the compassion and the generosity that the West is known for. It's known for rising up to these occasions. Tsunami is one example, but also at the same time, I don't think that putting the lives together or planning the kind of help, it can be done by the Pakistanis themselves. It would need other people who have experience in this in dealing with these kind of catastrophic events, of giving advice and telling them how to do it. this is needed. Besides just giving aid, sometimes it's so easy to send a plane load or a container load of aid, and as we've seen in the past, some of it just doesn't get there to the people, or some of it is just not needed at that particular time. So the logistics is where the West can also come in, and also the planning of how to put these lives together again, along with the aid is needed, and not to try and help from a distance. It's getting involved with the people. As Christians, that's what the incarnation is all about. It's all about God coming in to our situations and getting involved with us. And I think that should follow again and again and again. That's the principle that we should follow.
How do you personally reconcile, obviously, the power attributed to God, the ability to control everything, yet these things occur? How do you balance that?
I think sometimes people give a lot of things to God when actually they should be looking deep down within themselves. Let me give you an example. There are many high-rise buildings in Pakistan. They are built the cheapest possible way by builders who want to make a maximum amount of money. And as an example, they don't probably take much about earthquakes, or in the case of earthquakes, what will happen to the building. In the event of an earthquake hitting a city in Pakistan, a lot of these buildings will collapse. A lot of people living in these buildings will collapse. And here clearly the issue is not God, it's the greed of man. And I think as Pakistanis we get this all confused, where the greed of man has somehow come in, and it's taken as the wrath of God. Surely in over 50 years of independence there could have been a lot more that could have been done with having places for storage of large amounts of water and things like that. That could have happened, but of course a lot of that hasn't happened, and the destruction is more than what it could have been. Now, to take all of that and blame it all on God, which I'm sure some may be saying, I'm sure there would be a group of people that are saying, well, because we are on the side of the Western powers and fighting our brothers in Afghanistan or in Pakistan, this has happened. I'm sure there will be people who would be saying that. But on the other hand, there's nobody looking and saying, look, in all this time, what have we done with the canals and the waterways and all these things? Could we have stored a lot of this water better? Could we have been better prepared for such a thing? Of course, I'm not saying that there would have been some destruction, but maybe that could have been not as much as it is right now. And there, you can't blame God. That's man and his irresponsibility and his greed that brings this about.
Obviously, not to labour the point, but putting these events into motion, either directly now or indirectly through a chain of causal events, God would have known that these things were coming. How do you view these events when they come for themselves, so the actual earthquake itself, rather than the human aspect, the human failings that have compounded the problem?
I think living in a fallen world, we know that these things, as Christians, we know that these things will happen. We are forewarned about earthquakes and devastations and all these things. What the scriptures don't tell us is that we should have a kind of a resigned attitude do these things and say, well, okay, these are going to happen, and of course destruction will happen. There can be things we can do to minimize loss of life and destruction. We can do those things, and that's what I'm saying. We don't rise up to do them, to kind of be neutral or to resign from all responsibility. I don't think as a Christian that's what we're called to do. The world of science and all these things has advanced so much that we can prevent a lot of this loss. We can do it, but yes, there are people who, for the love of money, will not do it, and therefore we live with terrible consequences in the future. And so I always look at things. My first reaction is not to blame God or to say, why God? My first reaction is to look and to see where we as human beings have not lived up to our responsibility of preventing such things. I think whoever is to blame, as Christians we're called to come into the suffering and to do whatever we can to alleviate suffering and to pour out our lives into these situations. And so I think that when these disasters do happen, I don't think that's the time to start analyzing why they happened and who's responsible for it. I think at that time, the time then is, how can we be of help? How can we respond to this in a compassionate way? How can we help other humans who are suffering through this whole thing? I think that kind of discussion must be left for later. The first is to respond to it. For example, when we were made aware that we were going to hit great times of recession, one of the things I personally felt was that God was saying that we shouldn't hold on to our money that tightly, that we should be willing to share with those who were in need and not hold on to it. And there were practical things I personally had to do so that there was more money available for others. And I think that's something we're called to do.